Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. My name is Stephen Hastert, and I'm pleased to be your host today for our webinar on charting your roadmap to customer expansion. Today's webinar is hosted by ServiceSource, and we'll be discussing the critical impact that customer expansion has on future growth, as well as providing some recommendations on how to implement an expansion strategy at your business. But before we get started, I have a few housekeeping notes. We are in a listen-only mode. So if you have questions, please submit them on the top right corner, and we'll be reserving some time at the end of the broadcast so we can answer those for you. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to our two distinguished presenters. We have Mark Erbely, Global Customer Success Executive, and Jody Rule, Director, Pre-Sales Consulting, both coming with extensive backgrounds in customer success and sales. Jody, Mark, welcome, and I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Steve. Excited to be here.
Yeah, thank you so much, Steve. I'm looking forward to some great discussions today. So we have got a lot to cover today, and I really do want to make sure we have some time to go over questions at the end. So let's go ahead and we'll dive right in. I figured we could start with the topic of subscription-based services. It appears that the subscription-based model is currently the golden ticket in our industry. What started out as just a fad has now grown into an industry in and of itself. We can thank some of the large B2C behemoths for this forward-moving trend. Netflix, Spotify, Hulu, just to list a few household names that some of you may be a little too familiar with. These B2C companies are foraging the path for B2B businesses as well. These large companies have proven that a subscription-based model can and does work. They've created the value and they've demonstrated the benefits of subscription pricing models and have influenced the desire for a similar predictable payment structure in the B2B space. Now, while this industry transition is still in the early stages, B2B subscription pricing models will soon become much more commonplace in the next few years. So you might be thinking that the subscription-based model won't impact your business. It's not going to affect you, right? However, it's the exact opposite of that. The inability to remain flexible throughout this shift could potentially put your revenue and your growth at risk. Subscriptions place a large demand on customer loyalty, which is, of course, powered by exceptional customer experiences, or what we here in the business have nicknamed CJX, or Customer Journey Experience. The experience you provide for your customer affects your attrition rate and will in turn also impact your potential upsell, ups, and cross-sell opportunities.
That's 100% right, Jody, and it's great to be here with you today. Companies that are committed to providing a great CJX know they can't just move on to the next sale after winning a new customer. By remaining flexible yet predictable, by providing great experiences, and focusing on building loyalty, strong CJX-proven companies are going to uncover every possible opportunity to build a deeper relationship with that customer through the entire life cycle and help that customer solidify their decision not only to have purchased, but also solidify the decision to purchase in the future. What's shocking to me is the stat that's on the PowerPoint slide today. A Gartner study discovered that 72% of sales leaders felt their account management team were not meeting customer growth targets. This begs the question, what is preventing these organizations from being successful? We do know that customers are more informed than ever before, and there are now more options and information right at their fingertips, which makes it a much more competitive environment. What I've found is customers are more likely to remain with the vendors that are committed to earning their loyalty, but they also know what else is out there. In such a competitive environment, the subscription economy has made it so much easier than ever before for a customer to switch. This is a double-edged sword. Not only does your bottom line take a hit, but your competitors also receive a boost in theirs.
So Mark, this is really great information and something I see all the time. Actually, one of the reasons our customers come to us is this very thing. They either don't have the intel or the bandwidth to manage their own customer success team, And they'll reach out to us to maintain and grow that relationship with their customers. We all know it takes a very long time to gain a new customer, and we also know the amount of resource that has to go into that. The very last thing you want to do when a customer eventually signs on is just sit back and relax and put your feet up. This is now your opportunity to put your money where your mouth is and really just show your true value, right? So once they are a customer, this is your opportunity for expansion. Take a step back, consider how your business typically tries to enhance customer relationships after the sale. Take a look at that. Do you have a clearly defined customer success plan in place? Are you currently executing on a strategy to grow these accounts through upselling and cross-selling? Are you proactively looking at ways to improve their business outcomes in new ways? If you're not, then you're truly not taking full advantage of the partnership. A mistake like this could actually cost you millions in lost revenue. So remember, it is much easier to have a sales conversation with a customer you know than with a prospect that you don't.
Hey, Jody, let's take a step back in this conversation as well and make sure we're aligned on what is customer expansion. Jody, do you know what I see on this slide?
So what do you have here?
A lot of bubbles. But
yes,
also
a lot of bubbles.
a lot of dollar signs, right? Customer expansion is much broader than what most companies think about today. It's a term that can broadly be defined as the procedures and steps taken to grow your presence and wallet share with a specific customer. Most of us are familiar with generic terms such as upsell and cross-sell, but there are many more solutions that fall under the umbrella of customer expansion, some of which are free, some of which are not. You know, the intent is to grow the free to dollar value over the course of time, but it's a broad bucket of opportunities to grow your customer relationship.
So I'm sure we're all pretty familiar with this, right? The old adage, you don't know what you don't know, and it can apply in so many different areas. It also applies to your customers, so keep that in mind. They don't know what they need, and that is your job. You need to be the one to inform them and show them best practice to achieve their goals. You want to be the person that's going to flip that light switch on for them, and then you actually get to see the light bulb turn on. You want to serve as their trusted advisor. So don't sell yourself short. You are the subject matter expert and own that. If they are currently only covered for product X, but in your mind you know they would actually really benefit from adding on product Y, make that recommendation for them. Provide them examples. Show them evidence on why they should add that into their solution. Be that one who solves the problem for them, and from there you will truly have a customer for life. So Mark, do you mind talking through some of the things that go into creating a successful customer expansion strategy? I know that on the front line, daily with our clients on a day-to-day basis. So really, if there's no one better to talk through this, then the best practices would be you.
Yeah, I'd absolutely love to. Look, as you saw from my picture at the beginning of this presentation, I'm clearly the elder statesman of the two of us. And I've been at this for greater than 20 years. And I've had a lot of learning opportunities, i.e. had a lot of things fail. But I've also had the great opportunity to flourish with a lot of my customers and a lot of the programs I've been on. And I'm happy to share some of those insights. So the basics of any customer success expansion is going to require the right team, proper planning, and accurate data to inform appropriate action, as well as consistent follow-through. Unfortunately, I myself and I've seen our clients fail, time and time again here based on poorly managed plans and lack of consistency. You need to have the right mix of people, processes, and technologies to best optimize your customer relationships. Without a successful expansion strategy, over time, you're going to find that organizational silos form, resulting in higher churn, lower profit margins, and missed revenue expansion opportunities. Very frequently, I'm dealing with clients and customers who struggle with how they engage with their customers. And really, it comes back to that component of organizational silos. You may have a sales rep or an account manager who's working on a 2 to 3 year deal that's expanding the customer relationship. While on the other side, you have marketing sending out a promotion that's 10% off or a discount. In mixed messages like those things, where there's little to no communication between the teams whatsoever, are only causing you to get your customer to spend less and have higher dissatisfaction.
So this is spot on, and I see it all the time. I just always think to myself, it would be so much more effective and successful if these campaigns, if they could just work together in a cohesive team, if there was knowledge sharing, if they could complement one another's efforts. This breakdown in communication, or I guess we could say more of like a lack of communication really, is just a roadblock that we could easily resolve.
Another complaint I often see is that the customer success managers are driven by incentives to pass along possible expansion opportunities, in turn leaving the customer feeling sold to during critical moments that matter in the relationship. And no one wants to feel transactional at the end of the day. This again starts to increase your churn risk and diminish your upsell opportunity. You need to be smart about when you start to have expansion opportunities in order to make those most successful. And so implementing and following an informed customer expansion strategy will actually negate these issues from the inception to ensure that none of these easily avoidable mistakes ever reach your customer, creating a clear runway for future expansion and hopefully for the account manager a little bit more money in their wallet.
You know, Mark, something I found really interesting was that Gartner actually surveyed a group of account managers, and 88% of those actually believed they could grow revenue by simply providing great customer service. I know it seems pretty simple, right? You're like, hey, give great service and I'll sell more. Sure. Well, Gartner also found that while quality service does help with retention, it isn't exactly tied to higher expansion rates. Growth is more often achieved when you actually add in value, help your customer understand their business, and show them ways you can improve that they hadn't previously thought of. Essentially, what you want to do is provide them with industry insights and share information that they didn't know beforehand. So when you provide great service, sure, you're meeting their needs. Sometimes you're even exceeding those. But if that's all you're doing, you're just remaining status quo. And over time, what does status quo mean? Stagnation. Your goal should always be to improve. You want to be the leader in the industry. Make sure you are always focused on the future of the relationship. Constantly source ways to help your customer improve. And I can guarantee you that if you aren't providing them with this, they will find a competitor who is. This is why Mark and I just really keep driving home this idea of an intelligent expansion approach. This should be baked into your cohesive framework, with the primary goal being to add value and improve your customer outcomes. One thing I want to add here is that you don't want your strategy to be solely driven by selling your customer things that they don't need or that is not going to improve their business. That right there is a surefire path to failure and potentially churn.
All right, so I hope we have made a case for some of the benefits of a structured customer expansion strategy. But how do you actually go about putting a plan into place and executing on it? Over the course of 2 decades of managing and growing customer relationships for some of the world's largest brands, ServiceSource has always looked through 5 lenses. First 3 are pretty straightforward and obvious: people, process, and technology. Those won't come as a surprise to anybody. But we see 2 additional lenses as being absolutely critical: KPIs and data. This has proven to be a recipe for success when working directly with our clients and their clients. We have found that these 5 lenses provide insight as to where problems lie. For example, being able to measure if we have a people or process problem, not enough reps or lack of rep training. Do we have an underpowered tech stack? Are the wrong KPIs in place? Or perhaps there are no KPIs set at all.
You know, I see this a lot. In fact, just last week, I had a customer come to me and say he's really stretched thin. He didn't have the bandwidth needed to set metrics, and let alone manage to those metrics. Yeah, that was going to be a challenge. And you know, Mark, one thing we should really note here is that when it comes to customer expansion, timing is absolutely everything. If it is done right, it can strengthen your relationship with your customers. However, on the flip side of that, if it is done poorly, it will most likely have the exact opposite effect and can directly contribute to your customer churn. So, as you know, no one likes being sold to, which means customers are not always happy to be transferred to a new account representative when they just have a specific problem they're trying to solve. Just think how you would like to be treated as the customer and really just build from that. When you call into your cable company and you're just transferred constantly from rep to rep, it leaves you with a pretty bad taste in your mouth. Now, in an ideal world, every employee would understand the value of each and every one of your products. They would have had extensive training. They'd be prepared to improve customer outcomes. But let's just be realistic here, okay? We know that that is not the case. So if we want to successfully expand our customer relationships, it's really going to require a synchronized teamwork across all departments, which often means we need to shift our focus from departmental objectives to really going to clearly defined customer objectives. A customer-obsessed success team will bring us a diverse set of skills that will allow them to drive exceptional customer outcomes. In the age of the empowered customer, we really need to remember that every department owns customer expansion opportunities. It is a team effort. The sooner you can align and communicate, the quicker you're going to see these benefits. I can promise you that. So something you want to reconsider is your onboarding structure. Take a closer look at this and ensure the focus is the right level of tension on customer experiences after the initial sale. Be sure to promote collaboration throughout your teams while doing this as well. What does your onboarding process currently look like? How many touches do you have in the first quarter? Do you offer trainings? Do you offer webinars? Determine what works best for your business and really customize. Go from there to provide great customer outcomes.
And as you think about the different phases in the customer life cycle and driving towards customer expansion, one thing that's critical over the course of time are the measures. In benchmarking is one critical area that you need to think about that will help you evolve and enhance your customer satisfaction and growth. Take a look at the slide for a few questions to reflect on. Once you've answered these, you should have a much better idea of where you stand and how you can improve. As we get more and more sophisticated and into the subscription motion and subscription environment, things like expansion triggers and predictive analytical technologies are going to become more and more relevant in the way we manage our customer base. The ability to use and aggregate data to trigger an informed play, whether it be for an expansion or risk mitigation, is going to become much more critical in how we get to customers earlier on in the life cycle to address issues that will impact our ability to expand. Now, one of the things as we start to pivot towards, as we start to close out benchmarking and KPIs, ServiceSource did a survey recently where we were looking at how many KPIs our customers had in place tied towards customer expansion. It was really shocking to me to find out that 88% of customers had 0 to 4 KPIs that they were measuring tied to customer expansion. And 12% of customers had 7 or greater KPIs tied towards customer expansion. And I think that really tells you a lot. When I think about the 12% that had 7 or greater, more than likely they're thinking about their customer life cycle and the different phases of the onboarding, adoption, customer health, and customer expansion motion, and putting KPIs in place that are able to measure customer health as it relates to the ability to customer expansion. Whereas the customers with 4 or fewer KPIs are likely really probably just looking at traditional sales funnel KPIs that measure things like marketing qualified leads, sales qualified leads, what your funnel size is and what your value is, and some of the rep performance around that. So starting to think about how all of the KPIs across the life cycle influence and impact expansion is also going to be a critical component. But an even more critical component is leadership. In any business transaction, the goal is to have strong rapport and healthy relationships with the customers that are built on trust. If you can achieve that, they will be much more open to growth. And when we have those challenging moments or learning moments, they're going to be much more forgiving. That relationship all starts with your account manager or the person responsible for the customer relationship. They're the face of your product, your service, or your company, and they're the first person the customer reaches out to if there's an issue. If you haven't done so already, you need to appoint someone to each customer who is solely responsible for the health of that relationship, including everything from revenue expansion to retention. By doing so, you're not only reducing silos within the account, but you're also defining a clear leader who's with a bird's eye view who can more effectively orchestrate a holistic approach. It's the quarterback. When you step back and think about it, your business has a lot riding on the performance of your account manager. And identifying the right folks for the job is a task that shouldn't be taken lightly. Take a look at the slide for some characteristics to consider when appointing your account manager. You need strong personality, you need intelligence, you need dependability, and you need leadership. So from a personality perspective, a good account manager will have a good sense of how to read the people. They will need to be adaptable based on who they are working with, both in seniority as well as by department. They need to know how to build quality relationships and trust by consistent engagement to your customers throughout interactions and effective communication. I myself absolutely love rolling up my sleeve and working with our frontline team members. They are a wealth of knowledge and understanding of what's going on with our clients' business today. And to be able to do that and roll up the sleeves and have discussions and take that and bring it back to our clients in a more executive fashion is critical. And that type of personality is important to the success of a leader. The dependability. If your customer has a problem, they are responsive and committed to finding a fix. They are driven to not just meet but exceed your customer's expectations and are fully accountable for their actions. Customers want predictability here. I'm not going to go too far into intelligence. I think everybody understands the need for an account manager who's intelligent and creative and able to understand what the customer business needs are. They're thinking strategically, but also at times tactically. And lastly, from a leadership perspective, what's critical is being able to identify talent, build a team, and rally people together to achieve a shared goal. When they need to do the 2-minute drive as the quarterback, they've got everybody on the same page and moving quickly to get there. So if you can find these in each of your account leaders for each of your customers, you position yourself for increased expansion rates and revenue. Take some time to reflect after this webinar is over. Does your team have account managers that match this description? If not, how can you better coach and develop these?
So thank you so much, Mark. This was all really helpful. I think all of these qualities are definitely a necessity when you're trying to secure a team and you're looking for these great account managers. So just kind of a question, what would you say is your top interview question when you're looking and hiring an account manager?
You know, there's 3 areas where I really focus on when we're actually interviewing for account managers. The first one of which is probing and listening. So often customers are trying to explain to you what their problem, issue, challenge is that they're trying to address. But it's really taking somebody who has an understanding of how to probe to get to the right answer of what the customer is trying to say. So their ability to effectively listen, spend 80% of the time listening and 20% of the time asking clarifying questions in order to get to the root cause. The second piece that's absolutely critical, especially in a matrix organization, is being able to translate what the customer needs are to why it's important to the internal organization. So being able to explain to marketing, technology, support, why it's important to solve a customer issue, or how we get to a customer expansion based on what the customer says is the second most critical piece. And then the third piece is what we just talked about from a leadership perspective, talking to them about how they motivate. Getting different people motivated via different avenues is absolutely critical to your customer expansion success. And so understanding how they drive that is 100% critical.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Mark.
Yeah. Now, once you have the right leader in place, it's absolutely critical that we're calling the right place. So with that, one thing I want to touch on here are the data-driven processes that can proactively address customer health risks and sales opportunities. I touched on it briefly before, but I want to come back to it. One of the biggest roadblocks that we see for our account managers, or I've seen for account managers in the past, is accurately identifying which customers have an actual business need for an upgrade, an add-on, or a warranty extension. Absolutely critical to keep your customer right-sized. If you're forcing solutions on customers, if you're not confident they will benefit from it, it's going to be an issue. You may gain some revenue in the short term, but it's most definitely going to damage the long-term relationship and can lead to eventual churn. So consider the following questions when thinking through your expansion process. Do you compare and rank reps' performances? Are your reps reviewed monthly with analytics and compared against their peers? And do you have automated systems established to access quotes and opportunities?
You know, we did touch on this earlier, but expanding an account is just going to be so difficult if you don't have the rapport and the trust of your customer. First things first, you need to start building that immediately, right? So prepare as well as you can for any upcoming meetings. You need to do your research. Even if it's just checking LinkedIn or running a Google search, you know, whatever you need to do to find these relevant topics for conversations with the customer, just keep in mind your main goal is to understand their needs and goals. So something to look for, have they written any articles you could reference? Did they just get promoted into a new role? Is the company going through change? This is all the account manager's job to know these things before they hop on that call. Make sure you take notes the entire time, review these notes, and then always follow up. If the customer feels like they can trust you, they're going to be so much more open to expansion opportunities. They know you're the one who understands those issues that they're facing, and they're going to have more confidence in your recommendations. They're going to look to you as their subject matter expert. So they really want to know you're committed. You need to make sure that you're providing that for them. Let them know that you truly care and you're there to help. I can guarantee you that they will not hesitate to spend more money with you if they feel that they can actually improve their business and what you're doing is truly adding that value. Gartner recently ran a study that stated if you focus directly on customer improvement, you can increase the likelihood of expanding with that customer by 48%. While you also have a 94% success rate of at least renewing or retaining that same dollar amount. So all that simply from putting the customer needs first. Well, it seems like a pretty attainable goal if you ask me. Gartner has outlined 3 critical elements for this customer improvement. You'll be able to see these on the right side of the slide here. Number 1, provide customers with a unique critical perspective on their own business that they had previously failed to appreciate or acknowledge. Number 2, paint a vision of the customer's future business. These conversations are forward-looking, as opposed to the more common appraisals of their past experience. And lastly, number 3, provide your customers with an ROI on the entirety of the commercial relationship. Customers want to see the overall value of their partnerships with suppliers, not just an ROI on products, services, and solutions. So really from here, my homework for you guys would be to have you reflect on these questions after our webinar. Determine if your account managers are actually providing this type of offering for your customers. If they're not, it's okay. You're not doing anything wrong. It's just going to present you with an opportunity to only move forward and improve. So referring to my earlier comment, think of how you want to be treated and then treat your customers that exact same way. Don't come off pushy. Do not come off salesy. It's only going to deter them the way it does to you. So take time and nurture. Develop the conversations you have with them. Find out what is keeping them up at night. What can you do to help them succeed? And know that your ultimate goal is to make them look good in front of their boss. You want to work strategically with your customer to uncover all of their problems. Don't just assume that you know what the problem is. Don't go in with an idea of what their problems are. Attempt to solve it with them and don't do it on their own. Make sure you involve them the entire process. As we mentioned earlier, what may mean one thing to you could mean something completely different to them. Another thing is you want to make sure you aren't just telling the customer how they're going to benefit from this new solution. Make sure that you're also demonstrating it. Show them ways you've helped other business navigate similar problems in the past. I've really truly believed that stories sell. I know personally, I'm much more inclined to purchase a product if I've heard a success story tied to it. There's a lot of ways to do this, but one thing to think of is marketing collateral and content, even just a simple case study. Taking this approach could draw out the expansion process a little bit longer, but in the long run, it can often uncover hidden issues, creating additional expansion opportunity. So you can find that it's really worth it. Any measures you can take to ensure that your customer feels confident in their decisions will be well worth it in the end, and they'll be so much more less likely to experience buyer's remorse.
Jody, those are a lot of concepts. I'm actually really glad I didn't have those 2 slides at all.
It's a lot to talk about, right? Yes.
It was. Take a break, take a sip of water. It helps frame up this slide and kind of our next topic area, which is best practices. Now that we've covered how to have expansion conversations with your customers, I wanted to go over a few operational best practices to help put your plan in motion. First of all, everybody's got to be fully versed in your value prop and prepared to demonstrate the value of the upsell, the cross-sell, or the expansion opportunity, and how it's going to help that customer achieve their goals, solve problems, or attain their specific business outcomes. You cannot have your account manager or anybody supporting your account manager who's on that phone call or in that meeting floundering over what your product offerings are. Anytime a customer identifies and sees that there's a lack of confidence or a lack of trust in your solution set is going to give them a lack of comfort. At that point, your account manager is going to have lost all credibility. You need to make sure you equip your customer success team, your account managers, with data that's indicating whether a customer has a high propensity to buy. Whether that's usage data, whether that's survey data, there's a lot of different forms that can help enable you to understand that a customer is ripe for that discussion. Make sure you also trigger automated and personalized marketing campaigns directly from some of this data, from customer usage and lifecycle analytics. Being able to leverage customer behaviors to start to drive different things like drip campaigns or targeted marketing campaigns helps ensure you start to match the right customers with the right offer at the right time. With that, and even before you've done all of this work, you need to evaluate your pricing and packaging to ensure it's based on the business outcomes and offers the right incentive triggers for customers to invest further in your company. You have to understand what your customer is going to buy and how much they can pay for it before you even get into these conversations. And once you do start to get into these conversations, you need to include clear guidelines around how pricing works, especially in the subscription economy today. Lastly, always support your reps by sharing data and insights gathered from the customer relationship history, while also providing them with content and talking points to inform, engage, close the deals more effectively. It's critical that all functions within an organization enable the people talking to the customers to be successful.
You know, Mark, this is so spot on. You can have the best talent put in place. You can have all the best processes, but if you don't have the technology and the analytics, you're always just going to fall short of what you could actually achieve. The best customer relationships start with a comprehensive understanding of every single detail of that engagement, no matter how minute it may seem. If you don't have that 360-degree view of your customer, you're essentially going into this expansion opportunity completely blind. You wouldn't head out on a road trip without a map, so think of it that way. The preparation is critical. Unfortunately, there's just a lot of businesses out there that still track their customer relationships with these underpowered, mismanaged technology platforms. Or worse yet, we see it every single day here. They keep manual records in spreadsheets. Think Excel files saved to their personal PC computers. It's terrifying. Emails, voicemails, these things, they just don't work. The insights you need to have smarter expansion conversations need to be accurate. They need to be instantly accessible just right at your fingertips. With these individual spreadsheets and these one-off tracking systems, there's just too much room for human error. Automating this process and just streamlining these efforts is going to minimize that risk.
Oh, absolutely agree, Jody. The reality is in today's technology environment, the number of sales enablement platforms or applications that are out there that help complement your traditional sales CRMs is astounding and staggering. And companies who aren't looking at and investing in those sales applications are doing themselves a disservice. If you're going to set your team up for success, they have to be enabled and equipped with a robust tech platform. The platform needs to offer a complete understanding of the entire customer relationship, pinpoint specific processes and customer success plays, and constantly monitor and report performance to the account manager. With real-time reporting and data-driven insights, you increase the transparency of customer health check scores across your entire team and enhance your ability to take corrective expansion action when necessary. For example, analytics based on KPIs such as time to value will allow you to assess your customer success or account managers who are proactively managing onboarding, adoption, and customer engagement. These KPIs should be made available to your entire team so everyone understands exactly how the customer is doing at any given moment and has the knowledge to make more intelligent expansion plays. Tracking and refining the performance of your customer expansion efforts requires relevant metrics. Take a look at the slide for some data you'll want to analyze. Right? How often was the play run? When did it work? When didn't it work? And why? What was the customer success rate? What customer segment is the most likely to buy? What was the impact on retention rates and customer lifetime value? Now, a lot of this data can be gathered via a systematic approach, but some of this data is absolutely going to need to be captured through direct conversation between the account managers and the customers.
So by using these tools and these insights that we've outlined here for you guys today, you can create an expansion plan to achieve more revenue growth within your customer existing base, as well as be able to retain their loyalty in business. Of course, this is not going to be as easy. There will be no doubt required time and resource commitment on your end, but I'm hoping by now you should see why it is so critical to your bottom line, as well as the value that it can actually bring to your customers.
Jody, back when I was younger, and back when you were younger, I'm sure your parents used to tell you the story about how they walked to school in a blazing snowstorm with no shoes on, and it was uphill both ways for 5 miles, right?
Both ways, yep. Oh, yeah.
Both ways, right? My father used to be a sales executive when he was working, and so his story's now changed, and it's sort of turned, like, all of this data, all of these KPIs, all of this technology, his sob story is now around how much easier we have it today when it comes to actually selling and driving a customer relationship with our customers, right? So times have changed significantly. There are a lot of components out there that help us be enabled for success, and it's around how we pull all of these components together that is what is going to make us successful, right? And so, Look, over the course of the webinar, Jody and I have spoken about the importance of expanding your customer relationships, as well as how to apply that to your own business. Here at ServiceSource, we work with some of the world's leading companies across every point of the customer journey experience. Not only do we expand their customer relationships with cross-selling and upselling, but we can even run this entire sales process, manage customer success activities, and renew contracts. We are the industry leaders with a global presence. We have delivered outstanding customer experiences over 2 decades by utilizing our exceptional talent base and advanced tech capabilities in coordination with proven processes we have refined over the years.
Spot on, Mark. This is also true. I did just also want to add that we recently implemented a new digital commerce capabilities to our suite of solutions, so a new offering. And then this is just going to help us digitize and automate a high volume of transactions. It's going to just help us to drive better efficiencies, creating a unified experience for our clients' customers, and that's both on and offline. So in this ever-growing industry, it's just one of the ways we're working to meet our clients' needs. We hear you, we listened, and we're expanding our offerings to remain flexible and aligned.
Wow, that was a lot. I want to thank you both for all of that great information, but there's a few things that you need to clear up before we let you go. So we have a couple of audience questions. The first one is, do your metrics or touch points change when ensuring success for small companies versus large companies?
Steve, before I answer this, how many of these did you actually ask?
Me personally?
Yes.
Well, mine's the third one, so you'll have to wait for that one.
Oh, got it. Okay. Let's see. So metrics with small to large companies. They don't or shouldn't change, right? I think customer success, customer expansion metrics should stay the same whether you're a big company or a small company. I think what actually changes would be how you actually measure those, right? And that comes down to how enabled are you from a data and a technology perspective. So being able to use usage data will help you become a much more adept and accurate at measuring KPIs around when to trigger that expansion play. If you don't have that data, you have to use things like usage, customer surveys, qualitative discussions and things along those lines. So the metric in and of itself and the metrics in and of themselves should not change. Just the method and methodologies in which you calculate and derive those metrics will likely be different based off of the size of the company, given the investment dollars and things like that.
Well, Mark, I think you set yourself up for this one here. As the elder statesman of customer success, what's the biggest mistake you've made in trying to expand customers in the past?
I mean, the biggest mistake I've made was actually agreeing to this webinar. But when I'm talking about making mistakes with expanding customers, look, I think there's really two things. Not knowing when to expand with the customer, right? And so that goes back to you have quantitative data and you have qualitative data. And a successful account manager is going to, based on the relationship that they build, are going to be able to use the quantitative and qualitative data to come to a decision point that says, hey, I'm ready for an expansion. Just because the data says it doesn't mean it's true, right? And so if you go into a conversation about an expansion and then you're shocked to find out the customer's in red because they're unhappy, well, that's an issue. And that's where the nuances of account management come into play and make it so critical to go back to those leadership, communication skills and components that we talked about earlier. So, and then the second piece would be right sizing, right? Certain companies embrace the idea of right sizing and ensure that they don't oversell a customer. There's still a lot of customers out there today that say, hey, let's sell them and let's get the revenue in the door and then we'll figure it out later. And then the reality is, customers always get smart to that game and will always come back to calling the account manager and saying, hey, I've been overpaying you by X amount of dollars for the past few years. Why have you enabled me to do this? That becomes a very difficult discussion and that becomes a very difficult turnaround.
Mark, one thing I did just want to add here is earlier in the slides, you mentioned listening. So having that 80% of just listening and then the 20% asking questions, I think this really comes into play here because you need to know what is the customer actually asking for. What may mean one thing to you could mean something completely different to them. So just knowing those, when to ask the questions and when to step back and just pause and listen and then actually go from there. I think that would be really helpful.
Totally agree.
And the one that I really want to know is, can't we just get rid of customer success managers? Can't we replace them all with just automated processes? Or, for me personally, is a robot going to take my job?
I'm happy to hop in here.
I am a robot. I am a robot.
Oh, the truth comes out. So Steve, this question, I'm happy to take over here because it does seem kind of just like, oh, that's crazy. Why would you even ask that? But really, it's kind of the direction we're going in. So it's not that far-fetched of a question to ask. really the more data we have, the more we can start to automate these processes. And so it's something to think about, is that the direction that this is going? But the reality is we still need to have those human to human relationships to really drive the business. So one thing I like to to put into perspective here is to take two different tasks. Take your simple tasks and automate those. Put them into a process and just let that flow, set up a cadence, have that automated. But then your more complex roles, those should really be done with a human touch. That's where you're going to really find the growth and the expansion opportunities within the business. And so absolutely, there's a place, a time to automate things, but there's always going to be that need for the human touch, the human relationship to build that trust and rapport. So great question. I think it seems kind of far-fetched, but it's an absolute possibility. It's something that we can actually talk
to. Well, I think we're up against it and out of time for questions. So I want to thank everybody for joining us today. And as a follow-up, you'll be getting an email here shortly with a link to subscribe to our newsletter. We're going to be taking next month off from our Customer Journey Experience webinar series, and we'll be back with you in January. So we look forward to talking to you then.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you, Steve.